Okay, so a couple things that I have to fix here. This button needs to be outside of the form. So make sure you move the button because it was inside the form. I moved it outside of the form. And I just want to show you what this does. So I'm going to try something here 1 second just to kind of prove what's going on here. And we won't need this. And we won't need that. So just to show what this does, I'm going to save this. And then I'm going to go back to the browser and refresh. And just when I click this button, I'll see that text come up here in this message in console. So don't let this fool you. I have another file here now. I had to stop my video and kind of remake it, but it's the same idea. Actually, this is the file I was working on. I don't know what I'm thinking, but that is the right file. Okay, so what's happening is console log is basically, it's your friend. It's your way to kind of troubleshoot what's going on in this console. Now, it's not displaying in the browser right now. That's okay. We're just kind of troubleshooting our code. So we're using console log because it's a lot easier to do console log than it is to deal with this get element by ID stuff. So we're just using console log just for kind of testing for right now. So now I'm going to uncomment this grade. And I believe if I resave it and refresh this in the browser, what this probably will do when I click the button is it gives me an error. So you're going to have to start to kind of learn how to be detective, trying to figure out what this stuff means. So see where this says text num1 is not defined. Anytime you see anything about something not being defined, that usually means you're trying to use a variable or a function that it doesn't know what the heck it is. So it's basically saying that text num1 is not defined. So it's saying, I don't know what this is. You're trying to create a variable, but you're trying to assign the variable this thing. Well, it doesn't know what that is because I commented this out. So I'm going to uncomment all this code. I believe it's still going to give me an error, and I'll show you why. So I'm going to go back and refresh, click the button, still gives me an error, and it says read property value of undefined. So now what it's saying is it has some issue with this. And the reason why that's happening is because I put the assignment, what I assign the value of text num1, where I assign that value, is inside a function called init. Init is kind of short for initialization. So really what I want to do is I want to run init. So I want init to run when the page loads. I want it to go be associated. I want it to make this connection with this ID and make this connection with this ID. I want that to happen when the page loads. So down here inside body, I'm going to add a attribute called onLoad. So this happens when the page loads. OnLoad, I want it to run the init JavaScript function. So I'm going to save this, go back to the page, refresh, click the button, and I get the same output I did about 2 minutes ago. Well, why would you do this? Well, because really all I'm doing is I'm just displaying this. So the error was all happening here where I'm trying to associate grade something. So now that grade, actually now I'm not getting an error. That means that grade is assigned something. So let's see what's in grade. So I'm going to concatenate to my output what is stored in grade. So I'm going to go ahead and resave this, refresh the page. I'm now going to enter something in grade, click get letter grade, and it says you entered 87. Awesome. So let's see what happens if I try to increment grade by 1. So I'm going to say that grade gets what is in itself plus 1. semicolon. So what this does is JavaScript does what's on the right and puts it in what's on the left. So I'm basically saying, hey, look up what's in grade, add 1 to it, and put that back in grade. So if I enter an 87 here, actually here, and then it's going to grab that value, put it in grade, it's going to display an 87, and then my intention is that it will add 1 to 87, so now that will be 88. And just to make sure this works, I'm going to use another console log and just say something like grade is now, because grade should go up by 1 after line 20 of my code. So if I enter an 87, it should display you entered 87. Grade should go up by 1. It should then display grade is now 88. I'm going to save my page, back to the browser, refresh. I'm going to enter an 87, click get letter grade, and it says you entered 87. Grade is now 871. What? So what that does is it says what's in grade, 87. Concatenate to 87 a 1. It thinks that grade is a string. It doesn't see grade as an integer, and that's because when you enter a value into an input field, when I enter a value in here, by default, JavaScript will grab that as a string. It does not automatically see that as a number. So now I have one more step that I have to do. I have to go tell JavaScript, whatever this value is, it's a string, but I want you to turn it into an integer. So this is a string. I want to send that to a special JavaScript function called parse int with a capital I, and I'm going to send text num1.value. I'm going to send that, so I'm going to put it inside a set of parentheses to this parse int, and then whatever that is, it's just basically it's going to turn it into a number. It's going to turn it into a whole number and put that in grade. So now I'm going to save this one more time. I'm going to go back and refresh the page. I'm going to enter an 87, get letter grade. It says you entered 87, grade is now 88. So now finally it's treating that as a number. But wait, there's more. I'm not done. What I ultimately want to do is I don't want to just do console logs. I want to check to see what this is, and I want to display a letter A or a B or a C or D, depending on what the value of the grade score is. So just temporarily, I'm going to comment out this console log because I don't need it for the moment. And I really want to check to see if, so this is a conditional statement because I'm checking to see the value of something. I want to see if grade is greater than or equal to 90. Because if that's true, then what I want to do, I need a set of curly brackets. If that's true, I want to display, and I'm just going to do console log right now. I want to display a output string that your letter grade is an A. So I'm going to test this. I'm not done. I've done a little bit of code. I'm going to test it and doing this in baby incremental steps. I resave the page. I'm going to go back and refresh it. Now I'm going to enter a 93 just because I want to see if that displays an A. It's not going to be here in the page. It's going to be over here in console. And I click that and it says letter grade A. So what happens if I enter an 87? Well, it actually, here, let me refresh this. So if I enter an 87, well, it's 78's fine. It doesn't do anything. And that's actually what I wanted, because I'm only going to do this console log if this is true. What if it's not? Well, if it's not true, otherwise, or else if, this is a reserved understanding term for JavaScript, else if the grade is greater than equal to 80, I'm going to put a spacer just so you can see that better. So you need a set of curly brackets. I'm going to do another console log. Notice how I'm indenting in, I'm tabbing in to make sure that I visually show that this console log is inside this else if. So that's kind of an important thing you want to get in the habit of doing. I don't want to display an A, but a B. So I'm going to save this. I'm going to go back to the page. I'm not done, of course, but I want to test this. So if I enter an 87, it should say B, and it does. Let's refresh it. Actually, I can just enter 93 again, and it displays A. So we're off and running. But if I do anything else, nothing's going to happen. If I do an 80, it works. But any other number less than 80, nothing's going to happen. So I, of course, would want to do an else if. I'm going to get a little bit braver here. But you would want to test this one little step at a time. And I'm going to do an else if for C, an else if for D. And then otherwise, anything else, I do not need a condition for an else because it's whatever else is left. Anything else, I would want to display that the student failed. So I'm going to tab in, make this look nice and easy for me, the developer, to see what's inside what. I'm going to resave the page, my code. I'm going to refresh the page. Now, any score I enter in console, I should see the appropriate letter grade appear. Now, but that's in console. Ideally, I want that to be I can get rid of all this. I want that to be inside the document. Well, I already have this div called output. We've kind of done this before. So now that I can see it's running in console, I can say I want output, I want its inner HTML, excuse me, to display, it's an equal sign. I want it to equal, I think I can do it like this, letter grade. Just see if this works here. And I need a semicolon at the end. So now I'm going to leave that console here just for a moment. I'm going to resave my code, refresh the page. Now I'm going to enter a score that is an A. And I see that it displays in the page as well as in console. Now, of course, if right now at the moment, if I do anything else, it's only going to be in console. So what I would need to do is I would need to get rid of the console statements and then replace them with output inner HTML. So that's really all I need to do. So you can probably get the point here. But really what we're looking at here with this is a if else conditional file. Basically what it's doing is checking to see if this is true, do this. Otherwise, if this is true, do this. Otherwise, if this is true, do this. So the way an if else if works is it will be one and only one of these. So I'll say that again, with an if else, it will do one and only one of those. It will not do this if this is true. It's going to make this check, and if that's true, it's going to say, all right, we did this, we don't need to do any of this. It's done. If it doesn't, if it checks this, and if it's not true, it'll then check this. And it will do that if that's true. And if it does this greater than 80, then it will not do any of these. But it will make this check. If it's not true, then make this check. If it's not true, then do this. If it's not true, do this. And if it's not this, or this, it will do this. So it will do one. It will do one of these, and only one. It will not do more than one. It will do one and only one. So I'm going to go back and refresh this. And now any score I enter, I should see the same idea, but it should now be inside the page. So this is a great example of an if else using an initializer function that loads when the page loads, and then displaying the output inside our code. One more thing I want to talk about here real briefly. These variables must be outside of a function in this case, because we refer to text num1 here. It's inside init, and it's also here. We refer to output here, but we want to get to it inside init. We also want to get to it here. So because these two variables are used in this function and this function, we cannot do this. If I did this, it should give me an error. I'm going to refresh this just to make sure that does give me an error. And indeed it does. It says text num1 is not defined. The reason for that is because I'm declaring this statement, var text num1, var output, that basically says, hey JavaScript, create memory space for two variables, one called text num1 and one called output. It doesn't assign them anything. It assigns them something here in the initialization function. But because they're not created inside this function, they are usable anywhere in my code, in my JavaScript code. If I create them inside this function, they have local scope. If I put these inside here, they have local scope to the init function. In other words, local scope meaning if I put these two variables inside the init function, then only the init function can use and see them. So I'll say that again. If I put these two variables inside the init function, then they have local scope range to only the init function. Only the init function could see and use them. But I want both functions to be able to see and use them. Therefore, I create them as global variables. They're available anywhere inside my JavaScript code. So review this video as needed. This is a great example of a lot of different concepts that you will need to know.